I've done meditation for a long time, but
Oh, yes.
with mantra.
Yes.
I did guided meditations years ago with Eureka training.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oscar Ichazo.
Yeah, right.
Yes, at the Gurdjieff group. Yes.
And so how does the guided work compare to mantra work, let's say?
Yes, yes.
In terms of healing.
It's a great, great question. Well, in terms of healing, I don't know that there are actually data on that, but meditation is a big, broad brush term. And basically, you know, there are many different styles. Some of you, if you're Christian, you're probably familiar with centering prayer. Any of you familiar with that?
Yes.
Yes, so centering prayer and the Taze work. Yes. And from the Buddhist tradition come a huge variety of meditations. So the mantra tradition, let's see, I'm not sure. This is very complex. There's Vajrayana, there's Tibetan Buddhism, and there's westernized version of mantra tradition. So in the Christian tradition, you could simply repeat a word that is meaningful to you, like the holy name or peace or forgiveness, such as that. Or if there's a word that has holy implications, just repeating that. So the mantra, you know, the traditional Buddhist is Om Mani Padme Hum. And so there are many different mantras that have particular meaning to the people from which that custom comes. And that focuses the mind. So in meditation, there's a thing called samatha. Samadhi is the same meaning, different word. And that is concentration. So concentration is holding the focus. Holding the focus, holding the focus, holding the focus. And if you're able to do single-pointed focus, you can accomplish almost anything. And if your single-pointed focus is on deep relaxation, deep relaxation, for example, then you will have accomplished deep relaxation, and so on. The most common anchor for concentration is the breath. And why? It is non-denominational. If you're alive, you've got it. If you're not, it's irrelevant. Yeah. And the breath, as I mentioned earlier, is amazing because you're doing it all the time, naturally. If you're paying attention to it, your focus is going inward and you are calming yourself down. If you want to change how you're feeling, you can change your breath. So you have conscious control of the breath as well. So you may have noticed if you're tense about something, concerned about something, maybe your breathing is a little more shallow and you're not taking deep breaths and you're getting tenser and tenser, and all you have to do is take 3 conscious deep breaths. It'll change your blood pressure, your attitude, and your capacity right there.
And more oxygen.
And more oxygen, right? Your brain will be happier. Right. So mantra covers a whole lot of territory. And as you know, if you did the Gurdjieff work, there's also yantra, which is the image, which is also a way of focusing on a particular object. So this is very, very complex. And then there's the vipassana, which is the mindfulness also called insight meditation. That's from the Theravada tradition. And that has probably served me better than almost anything. And I'm not a Buddhist, by the way, but it still has served me very well. And that is because you learn to really notice what's going on inside of you. And I will tell you, if you don't know how to notice what's going on inside of you, you don't have a clue what needs to change. And so having the capacity for insight means having the capacity for seeing inside. And, I mean, insight's a great word, isn't it? I hadn't really thought about that. Insight, sight in, creates insight. And so that's a very rigorous form of meditation as well, which starts with samadhi. Many Vipassana teachers suggest that you have a long time of samadhi concentration building before you even try Vipassana. And then you start from head to toe noticing what's going on, and then noticing your emotional climate, noticing your thoughts. You know, the majority of our thoughts are repetitive, non-essential, okay, I'm going to say garbage. I was just telling Ashok, I was remembering earlier today as I was thinking about this talk, I suddenly remembered a colleague that I had. She was the smartest, hardest working physician I ever knew in my entire life. She was amazing. And she was riding her bike down her very steep driveway, fell, and had a concussion. And when I visited her in the hospital, she had this strangest thing of she would say something and then repeat it, repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. And she couldn't make herself stop unless you managed to change it and then something else and repeat it. And I thought, my God, that's what we all do. Only hers is right there in tighter loops. But this loop thinking that we get into, you know, this is an illness we all have. And because Vipassana is from Buddhists, I'll say the Buddha discovered that was the source of dukkha, which is suffering. It's exactly that. Caught, 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 caught. So you notice it, and then that gives you the capacity to pause. Breathe. And because I'm a blend, I'm not a Buddhist, I invite divine inspiration into that space, divine healing. And I find that very powerful. And then there's Vajrayana, which is Tantra, which is going with the energy as it arises. And that's all I'll say about that, because it's, it becomes very esoteric very fast. A lot of Gurdjieff's work actually drew from Vajrayana, as it turns out. Yeah, the Enneagram, any of you familiar with the Enneagram? Yeah, so that came from that work as well. Yes, yeah, Gurdjieff and Uspensky and all of those guys, they were big on that. And then there were a couple of psychologists, psychiatrists who took it to the next level and developed a whole system out of it. Yeah, Rico and, I've forgotten his name. Okay, that may have been more than you wanted, but I can go all day if you wind me up. All right, anything else?
I just wanted to say that in some churches, I don't know about all, but in some, forgiveness is very often a workshop or a seminar or a retreat that focuses purely on forgiveness.
Nice.
It's a wonderful experience to, at least I have had a wonderful experience in really getting the essence of what forgiveness really is.
That's beautiful. Yes, that's beautiful. I don't know if any of you, if I have a web page and I've given talks on forgiveness. One of them Ashok recorded and is up on my web page in the YouTube section. So what you're talking about is a whole workshop, which is just marvelous. But the what it is and what it isn't made me think about that. That's what I talked about in my talk. Because so many people get hung up on thinking it's condoning or... they get hung up because they think it is something that it isn't. It doesn't mean we don't hold somebody accountable. It means we let go of the barb in our own heart. It's for ourselves. Forgiveness is for us. It's just like the prayer says. We get the bennies. The other person may not know we were upset in the first place, and they sure don't know if we forgave them. But we sure feel better. Yeah, it's amazing. Mm-hmm.
I found that sometimes, or a lot of times, especially with the Christian side, it stays with guilty. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
With forgiveness.
Yeah, people just get hung up on guilt
Exactly.
Uh-huh, yeah. And either, somebody's got to be at fault here. If it's not you, somebody's got to be at fault here. If it's not you, then it might be me.
Exactly.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Isn't that what confession is all about?
Letting it go.
Catholic Church?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But it doesn't necessarily
Work?
do that. It
Yes.
has to do 5 more
Hail
Hail
Marys.
Marys. and-
But it can work. It doesn't always. I mean, none of these things necessarily work, but they all can. There's a huge variety of paths, and it's important for each of us to be authentic in the path we're walking, tell ourselves the truth about it, and another path probably won't work as well. But there are so many different paths because they work for somebody. And so, but that's such a good point, really. And getting, but that's one of the, that's an example of exactly that. And to let go of the tightness of our own mental constrictions around these things is freedom. I feel like bursting into a song. Isn't there a song about freedom? So, to really let go of blaming is truly to release an inner tension that causes so much pain. It causes so much pain. Yeah.
I would agree that forgiveness is a major part of the Lord's Prayer. I think of another part of it, give us this day our daily bread.
Yes.
He is, and when I read that, I thought that's really curious that he would have put that in there.
Uh-huh.
But what he's trying to do is say, don't be anxious.
Nice. Yes.
Yeah, take away that anxiety.
Yes, that's so beautiful. That's beautifully put. And thy will be done is a huge statement of trust.
Yeah.
Trust. Forgiveness, I think, I hadn't really thought about this, but trust is almost an important framework within which forgiveness can happen. It's like, when did it become our business to figure it out? If we trust there's a bigger plan, if we trust that, and you don't even have to believe in a separate deity. You don't have to, if you trust that there's a bigger life within which we all exist, that contains us, from which we came, to which we're returning, by whatever name. If you trust that there's a sense of divine order, by whatever name, it just, you can kind of relax a little. That's beautiful. Yeah, the anxiety. That's another. So anger, anxiety, the Buddhists would call them the cliches. The cliches. Okay, I don't want to overstay my welcome. I love being here with y'all, and I'm so glad you came.
Thank you.
And I hope you have a good life. How do you end something like this? Do I push this thing?
The little red dot on top.
A little red dot on, okay.